Hello and welcome to another episode of the eCommerce podcast. Today I have Shaun with me from Oddit, and he is a serial entrepreneur and performance branding expert behind the numerous DTC brands, founder of Oddit. And yeah, so great to have you here, Shaun.
Yeah, it's great to be here, Norbert. Thanks for having me.
Tell me a bit about your brand. What are you doing? How did you came into e-commerce?
Yeah, absolutely. So in about 2010, I started my first real business, which was a product design agency. Did branding, website design, that type of stuff. Got into larger digital products and applications, but just got kind of tired of the agency world. Got tired of the client back and forth and that kind of ongoing, never-ending sales pitch. And so I got out of that in 2018. I sold my part of the company and just kind of did some freelance consulting. Ended up doing a lot of consulting for performance marketing brands, D2C brands through performance marketing agency, and was just kind of blown away at how much money brands were spending on Facebook ads and TikTok ads and just all their digital paid marketing in general, and spending very little on their UX on the website. So they were, from a UX designer standpoint, there's 10 steps in a purchase journey. Number 1 is the ad and the other 9 are on your website. And these brands were spending all their money on the ad and none on their website. And for me, that was just so backwards. So we started running audits kind of as an answer to that. Essentially the goal was giving brands access to really high-end experience design without the price tag. So how we did that was basically removed all client back and forth. The only thing you're getting is the actual designer's time and some CRO professional time. So all we're doing is we're going in, tearing down websites and saying, hey, here's, kind of red marker it. Here's everything that needs updating. Here's how it's going to affect your conversion or your AOV or whatever. And really just help D2C brands and e-commerce brands reduce friction in their user experience so that they get a higher conversion rate.
Cool. And how can you know how much this will influence the consumers by visiting the website to have a better conversion rate? So what are the measurements you take and the experiments you do to have this understanding?
So we actually have a very different approach than most CRO agencies. Usually when you hear the word CRO, it's like heavy testing, heavy data. Yeah. Our approach is the exact opposite. We don't look at any data. We don't look in your backend. We don't look at your Google. We don't look at anything. Our tagline is a fresh perspective, and that's truly what we're trying to do. We come in just like a consumer would. We land on the site. It's sometimes when we do our onboarding call with customers, they try and pour us with info, and I'm like, no, stop. I don't want any more info. I don't want you to lead me. I don't want you to guide me. I want to have our team go in just like a customer would, land on the site and either have a clear journey or they're confused, right? I want to know. I don't want to hear why they might be confused because you're justifying it. So it's a very different approach than most brands are used to taking when it comes to conversion rate optimization. I have we have a lot of arguments on podcasts with people being like, well, what do you mean you don't look at data? But I would say that our customer results speak for themselves. That, we've done over 5,000 brands. And I always say we offer money back guarantee and we've given 5 refunds. So I always joke with them find me a CRO agency that has that low of a refund rate on their results. But I think honestly, what it comes down to is most of conversion rate, just like in retail or anywhere, is built on trust. And, you can pick apart the numbers, but really the main thing that you need to do when you're trying to build better conversion rate is build trust in the product, build trust in the brand. And that comes down to, in most cases, simple user experience tweaks, simple copywriting tweaks, and presenting customers that are new to your brand with information that says, hey, other people trust us, other people love this, and here's why. If you can do that properly, and to be honest, it makes our job easier. Most brands don't. So it's really easy to go in and say, here's the things that have worked for everyone else, and they're probably going to work for you. It makes our job somewhat easier. And then from a UX standpoint, the other part that makes our job easy is, most Shopify templates look beautiful, but they haven't been flex tested for conversion. They haven't been tested. Like, they're just made to be nice looking e-com templates to draw users in, or sorry, to draw customers in to buy into Shopify. And
to buy the templates.
Exactly. And I know that firsthand because we've done advisory stuff for Shopify. They invest $0 in their templates. And so that also makes our job easier. They look pretty, but there's always room to grow. There's always lift to be had with them. So yeah, it from that standpoint, it's, like I mentioned, it's not a agreed upon method, but it works.
To be very honest with you, I love this approach so much. It's really very interesting because I've never heard it before. I always hear, give me the numbers, then we do some tests. We need at least 1,000, or depending on the size, 2,000, 3,000 prospects that we test. And then we find out what we should do. We do some hypothesis, and then we change this, and then we test it. And this can be done for big, huge companies that have the money and the time and maybe a well-optimized page already, and they need to find out a few additional things. But really, for the average store owner or website owner, I mean, this is also a pattern that does not only work for websites, for web shops, it also works for websites. This is a very interesting approach to get things implemented way faster, with a lot of experience of history projects.
Yeah, and I think the one thing I want to be clear about is, like, I'm not saying don't, do that type of testing. Don't look at your data. That's not what I'm saying at all. I think we're a stage in the journey. But to your point, out of 5,000 customers, I would say maybe 100 of our customers actually had enough traffic to hit statistical significance. And I think the nature of e-com is fast moving, right? It's scrappy, it's fast moving for most brands. And if you're sitting there waiting for statistical significance on an A/B test for 3 months because you have to hit a certain amount of traffic before you can call a winner, I just find that so silly. You know what I mean? Like, you're making 1-2 changes every quarter. I mean, your business could be dead by the time you find a winner. Like, you got to keep moving it. And so I think it's definitely our approach is definitely more scrappy, is probably the word I would use. But I think it's, to your point, like, it's very different, and it's something a lot of brands haven't heard of. So in most sales calls, the brand's caught off guard at start, but by the end they're like, oh, this is interesting. I like the approach. And I think that's what they like about it, is it does allow them to be a little more scrappy and do things faster.
What's the company size to start with?
We very rarely say no, as long as they can afford the report. But we'll be very honest with brands that are too small, where, when I say too small, I mean, like, they're even just their product suite, their site, everything, there's just not enough there. But we've worked with everything from a brand that sells in a farmer's market in their hometown to, we worked with Procter & Gamble on some of their D2C brands. So, like, kind of run end to end, every size, to be honest.
Yeah. That's interesting. How many people do you have?
We have, as of this week, we have one new, so 16, and we're in 11 countries. So it's a very diverse group of people, and we've been very lucky.
That's great. In your opinion, what should every e-commerce business need to know about building a website?
I think that what I was mentioning earlier is a really important one that a lot of brands miss. I think that they put their trust in large brands like Shopify or any other provider, and assume that what they're buying is best for them. And I think you got to kind of find that middle ground. I coming from the background of building websites, I totally understand it can get very expensive. So I totally understand why it's enticing to just get something off the shelf, right? Whether it's a free template or $100 template, and use it. It's not just because they don't give a shit. It's because it's cheap, right? And it's cost effective for their business. But I think my advice would just be to be wary of just blindly trusting those things. Always question, play with it, question it, test it, try new things. Don't be afraid to mess with it. Because in a lot of cases, those things just aren't tested the way you think they are. And then I think the other thing I would say when building a website is just doing your best to, and it's hard for new brands, but doing your best to let customers explain what makes you great, not your team. I think a lot of brands get stuck in that marketing, writing vortex where it's the team is writing everything about what they love about the product or what their boss told them they should love about the product. They aren't even users of the product in most cases. The best people to sell your product are your other customers that are talking about its flaws and it's what it's great at. And those are the things that you should be pulling your copywriting from. I think in a lot of cases, brands just focus so much on, really, really marketing, heavy copywriting, which in my opinion for small businesses is stupid. I think, the just do it type of copywriting works for brands like Nike. It doesn't work for small D2C brands where they have no brand equity and they have no eyeballs and no reference point of what makes them great. So I think when you're launching a new brand or a new website, you really need to be articulate in how you explain what you're doing rather than, vague and I guess, fun.
Yep. Got it. Is a pretty looking website from a designer's perspective the one that will bring a high conversion rate, or does it need a bit more?
It's actually usually the opposite, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think that, coming from my last agency, we were selling, some engagements were $1 million websites over the course of 12 months and they look beautiful, but I can tell you firsthand that we never tested them. They were never, looked at for, okay, well, what's the conversion? Should we change this because of this? It was just, you go through, and that's why I got out of the agency world. We just went through every cycle of pitch the customer this, customer says, I like this, I hate this, and you change it, right? And it's like, what does the customer know about what effect that's going to have on UX or conversion? Or they have no clue. They're just using their personal opinion. And so you end up with a lot of elements that just don't work. And so in a lot of cases, it's finding a balance. There's definitely certain, positive conversion design trends that you can implement, that look good, but there's some that don't. And you kind of got to find a balance, to make sure that your brand doesn't look like or your website doesn't look like a circus. You know what I mean? I think that's one of the downsides of working with a more traditional CRO agency in some cases is they look at your data and they say, it either wins or it doesn't, and they don't give a shit what it looks like, right? It's like, this big neon sign on the home page header got more clicks, so that's the winner. And I'm like, no, this makes your brand, your aesthetic, you're losing everyone. You know what I mean? Like as soon as I come, sure it got more clicks, but maybe they were accidental. Maybe because it's such a loud beacon of light, it got accidental clicks. But I think you got to find that balance where, short-term quick clicks aren't always the answer, right? If you're trying to build a long-term brand and not a Amazon reseller that you're going to close 12 months later, you got to build trust with your customer. You're trying to build long-term brand equity. And that means having a consistent aesthetic, having building trust through your interface and your experience. And that usually means not doing, stuff like that or abstract design ideas that are just there as conversion tactics. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you also don't want to have it. I mean, depends on the business. If it's a service provider, you might want to have the best customers, the best leads, and not just every lead or every customer. And it needs to fit to the expectation of a visitor and, of course, to the conversion rate. But as you said, having a big neon sign on the website will maybe lead to more clicks, but will affect the quality of your leads actually. In your experience, what are the top 3 most common mistakes e-commerce businesses make when they build their stores, or what are they using in the stores that are big mistakes in your opinion?
I think that one of the primary ones is the e-com world and the Shopify ecosystem in general, and primarily has so many apps. the access to them is so easy. Shopify's made it amazing, right? In a good way to access different applications, reviews, subscription platforms, everything you could possibly need for your stores there. But what ends up happening is stores, they download and install, 10, 20, 30, hundreds of these things sometimes. And they're all very heavy, from a code standpoint. And even when you remove them, there's always stuff left, JavaScript left, or things left that are bogging the site down, weighing the site down. And one of the primary things that drives conversion is site speed. It's not a sexy thing, and that a lot of customers just don't care about it because it's not sexy. You can't see it. And most of them are sitting in their office at WeWork and they're lightning fast internet, and they're like, "Oh, my site's fine. What are you talking about?" But it has a drastic effect on conversion, and it's usually done from installing too many apps. That's usually the main issue. There's tons of others like image size and all that crap, but for the most part, if you're buying a template off the shelf, it arrives into your inbox pretty fast, and then you go and screw it up is what happens. It's not they don't send it to you all bloated. You bloated it. And so I think that's probably problem number one, is doing those types of things and installing apps and trying different things is totally fine, but you need to do the work after you're done with them to make sure that it's constantly being cleaned up and fixed, because slowing your site down has a bigger effect than anything I'm going to do or your CRO agency is going to do. Your site speed has a way larger effect, and direct effect. So I'd say that's problem number one. I think the second thing that a lot of brands in D2C do is they almost make their imagery, their copy, everything as perfect as possible. Again, going back to they look at big brands as imagery needs to be perfect, perfectly art directed photos, and all the product images are renderings, and it can look very beautiful. But it starts to feel a little lifeless. And in a lot of brands you see these days launching these big, beautiful branded experiences, most of the images aren't even images. They're just generations of, actual renders that they've made, and there's no physical products on the entire site. And when it comes to building trust with a customer who's never had your product, like I said before, they need to see other people using it. They need to not the founder drinking it, not some professional athlete drinking it, real people that came on this site, bought the product, and are drinking it, enjoying it. That's what's building trust. Someone shared with me a great article from, Taylor Holiday from Common Thread the other day. And he was talking about how UGC is dead, and what people need to focus on is CGC, customer generated content, and I agree with them. UGC has just gotten silly. It's like you're just paying random people to, drink or eat or wear your product that have no interest in it. And it's just such a stupid way to get, content, because when you watch it, customers watch it, it feels fake. You can tell they're selling it. And to me, it's just so worthless. It's no different than the customer making a random ad with their team.
It's more easy. It's more easy to buy UGC than to get a customer creating customer generated content.
I know
that's the thing I have.
Yeah, and I think there's applications coming up. One actually we're partnering with that's doing a good job of trying to make it easier for customers to get actual, CGC or what, maybe it's UGC, whatever you want to call it. But I think that's one of the things that brands fall into is they follow the trends and they follow the big brands and these successful brands looking at their websites and being like, wow, this is the perfect experience. There's no flaws. And again, that works really great for big brands. They almost have to be flawless. It's kind of like that model on the runway type thing. But 99% of Shopify brands, they're scrappy. That's why Oddit works with them or Oddit works for them. And being scrappy means being honest. And that's how all those brands that you're looking up to, that's how they got there, was being scrappy and being honest and showing their customers what the product is in reality, not on a runway or in a studio. And, you obviously have to find that balance. You can't just have a website full of UGC, but I think that's one of the big misses that a lot of brands have is they try and be too perfect and they kind of miss that part of their aesthetic.
Mhm. Yeah, I need to agree. Especially for young brands, I don't think that they need to be 100% perfect like those big brands. It's absolutely okay to take a photo with a smartphone and upload it, and maybe a bit of editing, making a good size or good quality,
Yeah.
but it can be still very personal. I think a smartphone photo makes it personal, makes it a bit more touchable.
Yeah.
For a visitor.
Yeah.
And I like that approach, especially for smaller brands, because every other agency would recommend you to hire a photographer and hire a professional team and just do this and that and render everything and make it most beautiful. But this just takes a lot of money, and you don't have time for test it out if your brand even works.
Yeah.
And it will also work with the other content if you do it personal and right.
No, and that's a good point. I think there is a stage in brands' journey where they should invest in those types of things. But at the beginning, I don't think it's the time.
Yeah. What are good performance indicators when it comes to e-commerce websites? When you open them, when you see them, what are good indicators?
I like to see a really clean line of like entry and exit. So what I mean by that is like, if you're driving the right ad traffic to the right page and your experience is set up right, it's kind of like they click, they go through the exact experience you wanted them to, they go to here, and then they're in cart, they checked out and they're done. Some brands want you to jump around, right? They want you to come on site and flip between products and end up adding like, I personally am like, let's drive direct traffic to what we're selling and get them out as fast as possible. But I think in terms of metrics, it's different for everyone. Certain products require more explanation. So like one answer I would have is I want them to read more content, right? I want them to see more about the product before they buy it because there's a higher purchase intent or there's a higher chance they're going to buy it if they understand it better. But that only makes sense for products that require more understanding, right? If I'm buying a white t-shirt, do I really want them on site long? I probably just want them to make sure they know which size they need and hit add to cart. Right. I don't want them to understand every detail of my white t-shirt. So it really is different brand to brand, but I think, the main thing that you want is just users taking the path that you thought they were going to take, right? You want to be mindful of that. If you set up your homepage or your product page or whatever in a way that was intentional, right? Like I want them to come here, then scroll here, read this and click here, watch that, right? Like go on your screen recording tools and just make sure that's actually what's happening. And if it's not, change it. Yeah, there's not really, I don't have a specific answer. Sorry.
What is, no, that was a specific answer. It brings me to the next, what is more important, written content, imagery or videos?
Oof, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
Most products benefit from a video, in my opinion. The struggle is that if they're not built properly into the site and the video is not made properly, it can be very heavy, which affects site speed. So it's kind of this balancing act when it comes to video.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you need a lot of copy for the search engines, of course, to be indexed.
Yeah.
But actually, nobody wants to read.
I know.
Anymore.
And I think that, Amazon, at least in North America, is where most people get their e-com, not any type of e-com experience. And
here as well, in Europe.
Everywhere. So it's, and they've done a fantastic job of educating stores on Amazon or sellers on Amazon on what works, right? And one of the things that they've rammed down your throat is some customers are going to read that entire long-winded explanation in text. And some of them, a lot of them, are going to just look at your gallery for all the content they need, right? They're not going to read all of that. They're going to flip through your gallery of images. So images become immensely important because, you're not on Amazon, but that's where most of the world is getting their first experience with e-com. So I think that it's going to become more and more natural for customers to never leave that top part of your product page and just scroll images. And I think, like I was mentioning before, a lot of brands, they just have their 4 or 5 studio images in there, their perfect renderings. And you're forcing users to scroll down, which, can work, but most customers want to stay up there, based on what Amazon's data says. So we always recommend adding images of a review, a UGC video, an overhead shot of the product with copy on it saying, here's what you're looking at, here's what's included, here's what the key traits of this product are. Not because they're sexy images that you want in your gallery, but because your customer may not scroll down and they need to get that information.
Yeah, that's a good tip. Really, I think that I don't see it too often that people have images in their product details pages where they also state out the benefits of the product directly on the images. They will have the image and next to it the short copy, and beyond it the long copy with for a few more additional images. But going through the gallery is really something that the people do, and that I've seen, and that I am doing myself as well sometimes. When I have a quick order on Amazon or any other website, I'm just browsing through the gallery. If it's there what I need, I purchase it because I can return it anyway.
Yeah.
So that's how people are doing it. Really nice one. I think we covered nearly everything. Maybe automation as one of the last questions. Based on your experience, what role does automation play in increasing conversion rate and user experience? Automation, personalization, actually.
Yeah, we're playing with it even in our in Oddit and how we utilize it better. But I think automation, when I think of automation, I think of how AI starts to play into automation and these types of things for brands. Yeah. But personalization, I think, is really interesting, whether it's personalized email flows. I think a lot of your customers come to site, they get excited, but they don't purchase that first time, right? So trying to get their email or trying to get their information and then having personalized flows go out to them through Klaviyo or, whatever email platform, I think could be really unique. From an automation standpoint, that's a tough one. I think even in the performance marketing that we work with, different agencies, a lot of them are using automation like AI to generate their ad copy, and it's working better than their copywriters. That's not to say fire your copywriters, but I think it's a good test to run to say, okay, let's do what we thought was right, and then let's run a fourth or fifth version that's written, using ChatGPT or whatever you're using, and start playing with stuff like that, whether it's your headline on your website or, you can push back against it all you want, but the numbers won't lie, right? It either works or it doesn't. And
it gives you a good bird eye view.
Yeah,
I think.
And at the very worst, the kind of lowest level, it gets your team thinking, right? And I think that's where most brands can get stuck when I talked about at the start, where the copy feels like it's written by the team, not by the customer, and that's very common. And we could go to 10 sites right now, and they would all feel like that. But I think having tools like AI or ChatGPT or whatever helping you spur new ideas can be really helpful to, like you said, whether it's a bird's eye or just giving you a different perspective on how that could have been written to spur more ideas. It's not necessarily using that. It's just a great tool to use to generate more ideas.
Got it. Last question for today. Who has taught you the most about conversion rate in your career?
Oh man, I'm gonna be totally honest with you. When we started Oddit 2 years ago, I did not know what the acronym CRO meant. So I always tell people that.
That's a good one.
I always tell people that. They're like, "Oh yeah, you guys are like, you do such great CRO," and I'm like, "We don't do CRO. Like whatever you think CRO is, that is not what we do. The end result of what we do is your site's optimized and usually your conversion rate goes up, but that's not how we sell it." So as of 2 years ago, I had no conversion knowledge. But over the last 2 years, we've worked with a ton of different people. Dylan Anders from Split Testing has been a great resource for us. Matthias Schroeder, who has his own brand and over in Europe and has a lot of great, he did a CRO guideline with us. And then a really smart guy also in in Europe, and doing great consulting work in that space is Chris Marsh. All very all very generous, in terms of sharing their experience and sharing their knowledge. So highly recommend following all of them if you're looking for more CRO knowledge.
Awesome. Shaun, thank you so much. It was really an amazing interview. I love it. I really loved it. And their approach is great. So not look at the numbers, look at the sites. Don't be guided by the customer, but make your own experience. This is, I think, very helpful. I often heard in the podcasts when we interviewed people, go and ask your family, ask your friends to visit your website and give you feedback, honest feedback on what they see.
Mm-hmm.
Don't guide them. Yeah. Really get the feedback. At the first time when you need to guide someone, you know already that there's something wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
If they don't get it out, what you mean. Also, the important feedback to not use too many apps. They slow down your website. They can even break your website. They can break your store. I know that they are in the environment of Shopify or WordPress and so on. There are so many plugins. But if you play too much plugin game, it's like playing Jenga.
Exactly.
I use this so often. Yeah. Every plugin, if you know Jenga, this wooden block thing, you pull out one of the wooden blocks and put it on top. And it's like, playing Jenga with your web store, and it's your business, and you don't want to break it down. Performance is the key. And of course, what I really liked is the customer generated content. Yeah, that's so important. Everyone, we know already the user generated content. We know it and we see it here and there, but it's not the same as if a customer would make a content. It's not so professional. You see it right away if it's a real customer or if it's Yushi's.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Shaun.
Awesome.
Have a great one.
You too. Thanks for having me.
Don't forget to subscribe to the eCommerce podcast. See you.
Of course.
And that's it for this episode of the eCom Ops Podcast. If you enjoyed listening and would like us to find and interview more e-commerce operations experts, please search for eCom Ops Podcast in your favorite podcast listening app, and then subscribe, rate, and review. Until next time.